they don't want you to know the truth.
Before, fam, we were talking about Palestine and we got dropped 3 times, right? So that's what happens, because there's an entire network of computer systems underground in this country that literally their job is like whatever words. So I'm sure Palestine is the first one. So if this drops too, this is what we just keep going. We got to stop. Well, I don't want to say stop around social media. We just need to be aware. Okay, so I'm excited about our guests, and
resiliency is the word that we need right now.
It is the word. Yes.
They try to knock us down, but we keep coming back.
Stronger and stronger.
Yeah. Well, listen, I'm gonna just do quick intros because we're 15 minutes behind, but we're doing great. Everybody's watching, everybody share. I'm so happy to have my sister in the struggle, Dara Baldwin. I got to make sure that before we leave, we show the book, of course. And then last night, it was last night. I was getting ready to watch a documentary that came out, Black Health in America, 2-hour documentary. It premiered yesterday. Stanley Nelson and his team, as always, did it again. So my dear friend Janet Dickerson, who I've known for a very, very long time, I was like, I need somebody on Black maternal health right now. And she was like, okay. And sis, I think I'm saying your name right. I would say Jamarah. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Jamarah. Okay. And she was like, yeah. And I was like, yes. Mm-hmm. I was sorry to tell too. Okay. So again, everybody, thank you. Again, this is May Day, full day of programming. I don't know what made me have 16 guests on, but I'll be on till 7 p.m. And what I wanted to do is first bring in the people that I truly admire. I can think with them, I can debate with them, and be friends. And I'm always happy to meet a younger sister, another sister doing this incredible work that you are doing, Jamarah, especially around Black maternal health and birthing and all of that. So again, this is Disrupted Chaos, sponsored by Cooperation Jackson. We want to grow the show. In order to grow the show, I need funds, but I also understand that people are losing their jobs. Nonprofits are shutting down. The recession is here. It's gonna be a tight summer, y'all. I mean, because when we're going to see millions of people on the streets is when they cut Social Security and when people can't eat and people can't afford housing. And all of this, people need to, especially young folks, let me say, this catches up with us. Now at 53, I know what all my elders said. Eventually, everything catches up and your body begins to break down. And I really don't want to see younger folks who are doing incredible work to be, still relatively young. And this is happening to all my friends because racism kills, white supremacy kills. And in a lot of ways, we don't really think about somebody whose body has been broken, and then it just kind of happens. And the older, particularly for women who get older, then we have to deal with perimenopause and menopause. And that in itself, because I'm in menopause, finding it to be really traumatic. I can't sleep. So things are happening to my body. I was like, oh, my hair's falling out. That's why my hair is long, because it's falling out. So I can go back to it being short. Just weird things that are happening. So thank you again both for being on. So I want to start with you, Jamarah. Like, what first, if you could introduce yourself to the audience and what led you to do the work you're doing around birthing justice?
Sure. So my name is Jamarah Amani. I am a mother of 4. I'm a licensed midwife, and I'm the executive director of Southern Birth Justice Network, a National Black Midwives Alliance, and the co-founder and the founder of Black Midwives Day. I've been doing this work since 2002, really, after I had my first child and really figured out that there weren't a lot of options for people like me. And even though I was part of activist communities, I didn't really find the solidarity that I needed in terms of being a young Black mother and being able to find access to holistic care, which is what I really knew that I needed. And so I was like, oh, I have to build a community and find the other folks who are scattered and gather us all together who are, pushing this movement forward. And so we formed the Movement for Birth Justice. And it really is about the human rights and dignity of all pregnant people, and essentially of all people, because we all get here through birth, right? There's not a single one of us who wasn't born, and we all are born with, our divine human rights and the dignity that needs to be respected. And so we honor the birthing process as a sacred process, which we know is not happening in hospitals. We honor the midwives as the carekeepers and the culture keepers, and the doulas as the advocates and the support and the educators, to push forward our rights, to push forward demands for justice, and to center marginalized people who have survived many generations of histories of trauma as it relates to our reproductive and sexual care. So that's what I'm here to do. And I got into this work by being a young Black mother, and I'm raising 4 children and still pushing forward this movement, over 20 years later.
And where are you based?
I'm based in Miami, Florida. So I run a mobile clinic here, and we converted an RV into a mobile clinic. We provide free midwife and doula care to people who are marginalized or may be locked out of access to holistic care.
Oh, that's incredible. I love that. I love that. And my sister Dara, who I'm gonna tell you how much I love this sister, but I'm gonna tell you too, if you're on a certain listserv, she will tell you moment to moment, they are about to cut this bill. They're about to do this. Like, your breadth of understanding the federal government, I would say a pioneer as well in disability rights, an author to be a problem, a Black woman's survival in the racist disability rights movement. So dope. And yeah, look, what do we need to know? What do we need to know?
Power to the people. First of all power to the people. Peace and blessings. Thank you for having me.
Hey sis, talk up a little bit more. You're muffled.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, stay closer to that mic.
All right, yeah. Peace and blessings to everyone. Power to the people. And thank you, Rosa, for having me. And Jamarah, it's really nice to meet you. And I'll be in Miami, so I want to come and yeah, we'll get back together. I'll be in a couple of weeks.
For sure.
I've been listening all day. I know Tonge.
Hey, Dara, you're going in and out. Is there a speak? Because we're hearing feedback, and you sound muffled.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, when you get close to the mic, yeah.
Close to the mic?
Yes.
Okay, is that better?
Yes.
Hello?
That's right there.
Cool. So, I was to say, I know today is May Day, and internationally people are celebrating, but many of us are not employed, as you said, as you were talking about, right? People are not really able to be working, not only working in the spaces they want to be working in, but working in spaces that are creating change and doing different things for our lives. We
Hey,
are
Dara, do you have headphones? That might be it.
no.
All right.
Sorry, you can't hear me.
No,
It
we
just
can.
got better.
Sounds like you're, but then
like
this sounds better, right?
Yeah, it kind of goes in and out.
You have music going on too, so I've been trying to like yell over the music.
I have music going on.
Yeah,
There's music playing.
Yeah, music playing.
Oh shoot!
So I'm trying to like.
Wait a minute.
You hear the music playing?
I thought that was part of the vibe.
I know my computer picks up music, so
Yeah, my assets are. Oh, wait a minute. Talk now.
can you hear me now?
Oh my God. The last segment, there was background. Oh my God. I'm sorry for the 12 p.m. segment. Now I feel y'all can watch it. Oh my God. I'm glad y'all said that because I would have gone through the whole day. Okay. Go ahead, Dara. Perfect. It was on. Just unmute your mic now.
You're muted.
Yep. Unmute your mic. No, your mic's off. Your microphone is.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, there you go. Because I was you have music going, and
it's perfect now.
Okay, good. And my computer picks up music, so I was just gonna say
Yeah.
that. All right,
No,
there you go.
Thank you.
Oh, that's no problem. So power to the people, all power to the people, and thank you, Rosa, for having me. And I was just saying that, today people are quote unquote celebrating May Day. It's a day about work and about people getting employed, and we're not living in those times. But disabled people in particular that community is never thought of on May Day because the high increase in percentages of employment for disabled people. And you asking about, what's happening here in DC. I must tell you, I live and work in DC. DC stay hood, DC stay hood, DC stay hood. If you don't understand that any other time than now, right? We are thinking and working with a man who is in our backyard. You are right. Many people, you don't have to see him every day. You don't have to feel his presence every day, but we do. And we are living not in fear, but in ready to move of him taking over the district, right? And people think that that's a joke or we're overreacting, and I don't think it is a joke at all. He's preparing for his birthday on June 14th, and part of that celebration is for him. He wants to have a military march. I don't know if you've heard this, right?
No.
Yes, where he wants.
It was a $90 million birthday party.
That's right. It cost $90 million. Yes, because he wants to have tanks, military tanks that are over in Arlington. If you know DC, we are a peninsula, right? Which means we have water on three sides. There's a bridge to Arlington. Many of you have seen. If you've seen any aerial pictures or pictures of the Lincoln Memorial, behind that is the bridge that goes into Arlington, that goes right to the Pentagon. And that's where those tanks are. And they will roll over that bridge and come into the district and roll down what's called Constitutional Avenue. If you know DC, that's how you come into DC. And this is what he wants to have. I bring that all up because I do, many of us think that he will not send those tanks back, that he will keep them in DC. I honestly believe he'll probably try to block off that bridge. And then another way to get into DC is the Highway 50 from Maryland, and block off an entrance to here from Maryland, and say, you need a reason to come into DC. You need a reason to come see your congressional leader. I know people are thinking, oh, that would never happen. And I'm like, everything y'all keep saying would never happen is happening.
And he's the commander-in-chief.
He's the commander-in-chief.
And he also has immunity from past and present things. Like that's what we were talking about in the earlier segment.
Yes.
And then people are going to bring up this, Dara, and you probably both know, right? You're not supposed to put the military on the street against your own citizens, but none of this matters. I mean, they literally just supported a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old that was getting cancer treatment, and the way they even spoke, the demonic venge, and I am what you said. I'm done with people like the courts. The law? You mean the law that
he's been breaking?
Or that you literally had a judge arrested?
Yes.
Like, people got to understand, this is how it begins, the fascism again. You attack the teachers, you attack the artists, you attack the professors, you attack the journalists.
That's right, the media.
And the media, and that's it. So nobody wants to, I don't worry about the courts, this, the law, and I'm like, I never better ever hear the word democracy.
Well, everything you said, I just want to finish real quick. What people also forget, we are not a state, right? And so he is in charge of our National Guard. He already has that control because we don't have a governor. And so he already has that, and we already lived in a military state right after January 6th. Many people who don't live here don't know that. We were, right, there were soldiers here on our street for 8 weeks. Right. Doing that. So we've already had that. And finally, like you said about democracy, I tell people, I moved to DC like 2007, and there were quote unquote high crime going on in Trinidad, which is a section of DC that's very, was back then very Black. It's where Gallaudet University is, our deaf students go. And our mayor, a Black man who was a Democrat, said and put boundaries around and said you had to have a Trinidad license, or had to have Trinidad address on your license to come into Trinidad and come out, go in and out, right? And we had to go to the ACLU to fight him. That was a Democratic Black man who tried to put, nobody needs papers to move in the United States. You can go wherever you want, right? So don't tell me that this man doesn't think this. And finally, people think that he's okay with having a Black woman run this city. And that is completely, if you are not following what's going on, because every decision being made in this administration is a bunch of white men sitting in a room making decisions for our lives. And for disabled people, many of you may not have heard, it's called the Ugly Laws. I write about it in my book, came around in 1865. And what it said, what it started right here in the United States, if you are disabled, you cannot be in public spaces. And so we see this man retroacting and removing and dismantling laws that are supposed to protect us in this country. I specifically think because he hates disabled people so much, they will bring those kinds of laws back into space. And we here in DC are the petri dish. Like, let me try it out here, and then we can go do it at other places.
Yeah. And Jamarah, like, you doing this work and what's happening now, like, first, are you feeling the impacts of the chaos that's happening, and so many people losing, funding? How are you seeing that impact in the people that you're serving?
Absolutely. We've been actually meeting about this a lot because we're trying to gather resources as the fallout happens, as the economy shrinks, as people lose their jobs and lose access to services and insurance and the few safety nets that still exist in the United States. The questions we've been asking is, what are we building? What are we doing to continue to support our people? When the system crumbles, when the hospitals close, the midwives will be here to catch the babies.
Right.
And so we've been, advocating for and gathering resources to be able to continue to do our work, especially for marginalized people, for undocumented folks who don't feel safe going to clinics or facilities or hospitals, for folks who are being turned away because we have a 6-week abortion ban here in the state of Florida. So people who are even going in for miscarriage services or non-viable pregnancies are also being turned away and having to figure out what to do on their own. And so we train doulas to be the first line of defense for people to meet the need when there are folks who cannot access systemic care or don't feel safe doing so. We train doulas to be the advocates. We have a birth justice bill of rights so that people know what their rights are and that we don't have to surrender our bodies to a system that was designed to destroy us. And that's been what we've been on from before this administration, right? And so the things that are happening now are just highlighting the end of capitalism, the fall of empire, and really the dangers of fascism and how it impacts the most vulnerable people. And so what I hope and what I I'm working on is building that safety net and making sure that we're connecting with, immigrant justice organizations and climate justice organizations and other types of healthcare organizations, so that we can continue to build this safety net and this wraparound care to catch folks that are falling. And that's the work, that like I said, we've been doing, but it's even more important now. And I also just want to say that I think it's really important to understand our human rights. We often talk about what the federal government is doing, which I think is important for us to be informed on, but I think focusing solely on that makes a lot of folks feel powerless. And so I've been also doing international human rights work for the last few years, and I think it's really crucial at this time that we understand that we have rights that go outside of the United States. And so we've been distributing copies of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which were distributed by Sister Song, which is a women of color reproductive justice organization. But the cornerstone of reproductive justice really has always been human rights. Big shout out to Mama Loretta Ross, who taught us that, who taught me that, in the early 2000s, over 20 years ago, that we have to understand human rights and we have to educate about human rights, so that we don't get so frustrated with our federal government that we feel powerless or that there's nothing that we can do. So I've actually been blessed with the opportunity to go to the United Nations as civil society and charge the United States government with crimes against humanity, because it's important that we say and advocate for the global solidarity of a movement, where there are people all around the world that are looking at the United States and are being impacted by these unjust laws and policies and being subject to genocide unnecessarily. And then when it's happening to us inside of the United States too, it's so important that we link arms with folks around the globe so that we can stand together and put pressure from the inside and the outside like a sandwich, because I think that's more effective than just going to the courts, like you said, and the federal government.
Yeah, and that the internationalism, like people are watching people in this country start to push back, but the impact of the United States around the world, the chokehold it has on many governments, the billions of dollars that are now not going to programs on the continent or the Caribbean or pretty much, around the world. And then obviously the overturn of Roe versus Wade. And, I see that moment is like, I really did believe that wasn't going to happen. And then when it did, I really thought like the whole country would be lit up. I was like, if this was men losing their rights, like the country would have burned in a couple of days. And also that reproductive rights are not just about abortion. They're about our bodies. And watching this documentary last night on Black health in the community, they were talking about all these experiments they would do on women. And this one doctor did an experiment on a enslaved Black woman and didn't use anesthesia, right? Like just straight cutting into her. And then he would write like, every time I do something worse, she still doesn't die. This is incredible. What surgery are going to try to do next? On a personal level for me, when I was first pregnant, I knew I was pregnant. I was very like nauseous and sick from day one. And I'm talking to people, and people were well-meaning. Like people like, oh, peppermint tea. I'm like, it's not peppermint tea. Like there's something wrong. Talking to my aunts, they're like, oh, morning sickness. But I had it every day for 2 months. And then when I finally was like, I am going to have an abortion because I was so sick. And then the last doctor I went to basically was like, if you continue this pregnancy, you might die or your child might die. And I was like, oh, so, okay. So then I get pregnant again and it begins again. So what it was is I had a disease called hyperemesis. And I'm sure you know about this, right?
Yes.
And it happens in 1% of the women in this country, right? And what it is, I had a very, very severe. From the moment I was now pregnant the second time with my daughter, Alicia, I actually lost 40 pounds. I was hospitalized 7 times for dehydration. I couldn't even drink water. Every day I was violently throwing up 10, 12, 15 times a day. My hair was falling out. I had no clue. Every doctor I went to was what they talked about in the documentary, especially about OBGYN and the men who started the OBGYN, but then they came up with the terms of like hysterical and all these terms, and would often say like Black and Latino women, they would say to us, oh, what, you doing drugs? Or like, just deal with it. And I went to that last doctor, and then I don't know what happened, but I went and found another doctor, and immediately she's like, you have hyperemesis. And I was like, I don't know what that is. Mind you, folks, this is 2004, so 21 years ago. She broke it down. And she said, if you're going to continue the pregnancy, you need to be aware that you'll probably end up in the hospital a lot. And I was like, okay. Then one of my visits in the hospital, I gave up. I was like, I feel like I'm dying. Like, how is my baby going to come out? Like, I'm petrified. And the doctor comes in, a doctor, and says, I highly recommend you have an abortion. And every time you have this hyperemesis, each pregnancy will be worse. And I just remember, like, at first I was like, yes. And then my husband's like, babe, you can do this. And then I had some of my friends come in and use their Bruja powers and stuff like that. And, thankfully, Alicia was born and is now 20 years old, but I did not enjoy my pregnancy. I only took 2 pictures. I was scared. I felt so alone. I was like, is it in my head? Even though there was now like something I knew. Luckily, the point of this story is now 20 years later, it's widely recognized. And one of the reasons I've read is more recognized and accepted. And OBGYNs are not like, oh, you're crazy. You're supposed to throw up. Like, I threw up as I was giving birth. And then like a day later, I finally had a meal. And even my doctor and my therapist was like, the impact of what happened is going to be on your body for years. And I got this weird relationship with food where I was just scared to eat. Right. The point of this was when the princess or whatever, this new queen or going to be the queen, Kate Middleton, she had hyperemesis and she wrote about it. And when she wrote about it, like, there's been now massive amount of funds. So Jamarah, I am sure you have known women that you have helped birth their children had this and have had hyperemesis. And fam, like, what happens is I did want another child, but the doctor was like, it will get worse. You made it through this, you're not going to make it through another one.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing your story. There's so much power in telling our stories. And that's part of our mission too, is to collect these stories and make them known, not just the stories of the so-called royals, right? But the everyday people. And it's interesting that you shared that story on this hour, because it does cross into disability as well. And what are your rights as a pregnant person who is going through something your body was going through something really traumatic, and you weren't necessarily getting the answers or the care that you needed right away. But I loved what you said about the Bruja power of your friends and the support of your partner, because it sounds like that's what really made the difference of you pushing through and persevering. And so, that just moves me back to this mission that we have at Southern Birth Justice Network, which is really about community care. The solutions that we need to many of these, pregnancy issues are in our communities already. Midwives have been here from the beginning of time. It's actually the real oldest profession. And because those sex workers had to be born, right?
Right.
And so, being that midwives have been here from the beginning, but as you mentioned, the profession of obstetrics and gynecology really took over the care, obstetric care, and pregnancy and reproductive related care around 1857, when the American Medical Association basically initiated a campaign against midwives, the majority of whom were Black and Brown and Indigenous, right? And caring for their own communities in cultural ways, in humanistic ways, and holistic ways, with herbal care and, emotional support and and all the things that we think about when we think about like our grandmother's hugs and our grandmother's meals, and those home remedies that are so healing and holistic. Those are things that were taken out of our communities, and we were removed from them in favor of hospitals that are sterile, and everyone's wearing white coats, and they were, as you said, experimenting on all birthing people, on all women, right? But more brutally on Black women. And so you had Dr. J. Marion Sims, as you mentioned, the quote unquote founder or father of gynecology, that enslaved Black women and used them for experimentation without anesthesia. Their names, actually, we should always say their names, are Anarcha, Betsy, and Lucy. Those are the names that we know of the women that were experimented on. Anarcha herself was a midwife. And so much of the knowledge that was known by these white men about the female body came from the Black women who were the midwives on those plantations. And so that's a whole history that really doesn't get taught a lot in medical schools. And so you still have today a field of obstetrics and gynecology that is largely based on these slavery tactics, the procedures, the methods, the tools, the equipment. A lot of it still remains the same. And so that is why we have a situation in the United States where we're losing mothers to maternal mortality at 3 times the rate in France and Canada, and 14 times the rate in New Zealand and Norway, right? And even though we spend exponentially more on maternal and infant care. So what does it say about this country and its priorities? And this reality, it impacts birthing people of all races, but disproportionately impacts Black and Indigenous people at 3 to 4 times the rate of our white counterparts, meaning Black birthing people are 3 to 4 times likely to die when it comes to giving birth. Indigenous birthing people are 2 to 3 times likely to die when it comes to giving birth as our white counterparts. So, and it just underscores the deep racial disparities in pregnancy and birth and the unjust legacies of colonization, Native genocide, and the African Holocaust, and the impact that it has today, as many of those systemic racist policies still exist in these institutions where people are forced to go for their care.
Fire. You just taught so many, like, oh, wow. Dara, so Black and Latino women, from probably the 1930s to maybe even the early 80s, but particularly in Puerto Rico, there's a thing that's called La Operación, and basically what it was in Puerto Rico was that pharmaceutical companies were testing IUDs, and they put these IUDs in Puerto Rican women, the Afro Puerto Rican women, and did experiments. And what they did was they never took the IUD out. So one third of women at that time in Puerto Rico, 1/3 were sterilized. That same doctor then gets moved to Lincoln Hospital in the Bronx. The Lincoln Hospital in the Bronx has a very rich, like, kind of activist experience, right? The Young Lords most famously basically took over the hospital and started detoxing heroin addicts. In fact, our dear political prisoner, and he's in freedom now, Mutulu Shakur, came up with how we could detox people through acupuncture. And he became such a threat that then all these charges, and then he's in prison for over 50 years. He really recently, a couple years, got out, but he only was with us for 6 weeks. So Dara, like, I've seen many reports and documentaries about and I'm sorry. So the doctor that was brought to Lincoln Hospital would then go on to sterilize like 6,000 other African American women and Puerto Rican women, and the only way they find out was after it happened. So Dara, I've seen a lot around the language of people that have disabilities. I think I grew up in a time period in the 80s where we were taught to be afraid of someone who has a disability. And then I didn't really know that until I went to college and began to learn. And I felt kind of ashamed. And then my friend was like, we didn't know. Our parents, some of our parents or family, even if we had someone in our household that had a disability, it was like they were always ignored. Right. So in terms of disability rights and what has been done to people with disabilities, including lobotomies and all these crazy experiments, it ties into this, right?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So first, I'm gonna get you together there, Rosa. I do disability justice.
Sorry.
That's all right. And it is a difference. Disability rights, so people understand and know, centers white folks, as all rights movements do. Right. And this is not new. And thank you, Jamarah, right, for bringing it up. I was there as well, where reproductive justice came out of the fact that reproductive rights movement was not doing what we as Black people know and do. So it's the same thing. Disability rights movement was not listening, right, and not doing. And so we moved to disability justice. There are 10 principles to it, right, that we follow. And I want people to know that the first one is intersectionality, right? So you know, and again, I write about this in my book. And it is important to know that the reproductive justice community is one of the first to really embrace disability justice, right? And that work is still going on. I work with Sister Song as well, right? And work with lots of reproductive justice folks around the country. And so when you talk about our work, we have to talk about it in a justice format. So I'll say that. And you are correct. When it comes to disabilities, if you don't take anything else away from me, is that there's nothing wrong with having a disability, right? That disabled folks, as we were saying, have been here since the beginning of time. You can see it in archaeologists have shown it, right? In Egypt and all over the world. So that's that. And then, yes, the stories that were just told about OBGYN and all this care and what's happening, most of those people were disabled folks that the work was being done on. It is interesting to see that people also think that the story you talked about was sterilization. Yes, there were many laws that stopped sterilization, but unfortunately, in the last 7 to 8 years, many states have brought back on sterilization or never got rid of it. They just hid it, really. And people don't understand. We know that, I will say this, and we say this during the lockdown, because we are still in a COVID epidemic. There's no World Health Organization that said there's an end to the COVID epidemic, but during the lockdown where we were in 2020, you had a facility, a detention center in Georgia, where a doctor was sterilizing mostly Latina women in that immigration center, right?
Oh, yeah, I remember. Yes.
So that happened then, and people thought, no, you don't do this anymore. We were like, yes, they do this all the time in institutions around the country. And so this happens to especially disabled folks, immigrants, people, right, who are of low economic status. It happens to them all the time. And unfortunately, this is happening in institutions. Why we also need to move the abolitionist movement from not just saying closing jails and prisons. We need to close any place that holds bodies in bondage, specifically Black and brown bodies or indigenous bodies, which are nursing homes, troubled teen centers, rehab centers, mental health institutions, where they do this to our people over and over again. And when I say sterilization, they do sterilize women and those who identify as women. They sterilize men as well. It is happening over and over again. And finally, I just want to say, and I love and I understand the concept of human rights, but I want people to understand and know, for us, the cornerstone of human rights never included disabled people. And even the Convention for United Nations had to go back and rewrite. We had to sit and include disabled people in. And the reason being is that most people think of disabled people as subhuman.
Yeah.
And so we, as a disability justice, we try to stay away from that model, but understand and know we do take on all of the characteristics, meaning that we are all connected throughout the world internationally. And that's where those ugly laws came from and still exist in Eastern Europe, right? Like when Ukraine happened, we had to tell people go west and south to like Poland, right? Do not go east or north, like towards Belarus or in those countries, because you can't have a disability and be on the streets in those countries. That still happens, even with quote unquote human rights laws that literally in some countries don't include disabled people. So we need to understand and know that. But we also know that the community pushes and says we need to change that because when you use the human rights movement or any rights movement, is not going to include disabled folks. But we understand and know that we have to change that, right? That we have to move that concept and understanding that you need to include all people. And I'm the same way. I had to go to the United Nations in December 2022 to bring that forward. When they started the People's Forum for African Descent, same thing. They wrote a charter, did not include disabled people, right? Got a bunch of disabled people together and said, we're going to write this section of that charter. It continues to have, that was 2022, that the United Nations wrote yet another charter to start or working on another group of people around the world. It did include disabled people. And let me be clear to you, with the wars and the conflicts and the things that are going on, people of African descent around the world are disabled at a higher rate, right? They're losing limbs, they are losing their sight, they're losing their hearing from these wars and these treacherous places they live in. They are losing their homes, right? That's PTSD, that's mental health. And for you not to include the disabled people in a charter yet again at the United Nations around a group of people tells you that that ghost of you not thinking they're human is still lingering through the work of this world.
Yeah, and in Palestine, we know there's going to be hundreds of thousands of people who have become disabled because of the war, or not a war, a genocide.
Every person in Palestine is a person with a disability because of PTSD.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the guest you just had on, our sister who just went there and came back, she was in PTSD. I was listening to her speak. That is a traumatic situation she went to and she witnessed. Tiny coats, when you listen to him talk, his voice changes, his eyes change when he talks about the genocide that he saw in Palestine. Every person who is in Palestine, visiting Palestine, going to witness what is happening is suffering and going through PTSD. And PTSD is a form of a disability. Now, it can linger for your life, or you can get, quote unquote, move to something else. You never get over it. Let me be clear to you. One little thing will trigger and you'll go right back to where you were when you first witnessed what was going on.
I'm so glad you said that. I mean, I didn't frame it like that, but I do know personally, I don't watch those videos. Like no. I'm absolutely, I don't watch videos anymore. Police killing our people, things, and then some people will try to shame you, like you need to know what's going on. Like, I am clear on what's going on. I don't need to watch children dead. Like, I'm not doing it. But that
because it has a weathering effect on us too. Yeah. I mean, there's been studies that show that when there's a shooting in a neighborhood, the rates of preterm labor go up. The blood pressures of the people that live in that community are higher. Black people's resting blood pressures don't really rest at night in the same way that white folks do. All of this has an allostatic load. It takes a toll on us, and it has a lot to do with the shortened lifespans, right, in certain zip codes and among certain racial demographics. And it's the effects of white supremacy. And the overexposure of it is actually a tool of colonization to desensitize us and also to have us internalize that trauma and to experience PTSD because it paralyzes you, So not to saying we shouldn't be aware and we shouldn't be a witness, but the constant exposure, we have to recognize the effects of mental health. And thank you, Sister Dara, for bringing up what you brought up around disability justice and the need to center that in our movements and to center disabled people at the international level and in all of our work. It's definitely something that I see a lot when it comes to pregnancy. When we have folks that are either struggling with mental health or physical disabilities, also the impacts of pregnancy. We talk about the deaths, the maternal deaths, but the morbidities are just as impactful in terms of the way that it negatively impacts people's lives and communities and leaves them dealing with chronic health issues that now they have to navigate in the same system that harmed them in the first place. So much of birth justice also crosses disability justice. Yeah,
I've been working with them for years, and thank you for that, sis. And I just want to say, like, I have friends who have never had an OBGYN service. They never will. There are no tables that are set up that are accessible for them, right? Like, we don't partner and we don't work with Planned Parenthood because there's not an accessible Planned Parenthood in the country. whether it be for their building for them to get into, or their programs, or their durable medical equipment. There are few and far between facilities that can really take care of our disabled people who want to have any kind of OBGYN care, even midwifery care. But that's why we work with the reproductive justice community. You do have someone really great, Lori Beatram Roberts, who is from Mississippi, who has the same, like you're shaking your head, right? Who has a mobile unit that is accessible. One, at, like we were saying in your last segment, there's billions of dollars in philanthropy, and we can't keep her afloat. Like, we're all donating and making sure Lori stays afloat so that Black and brown disabled people can have this service. Organizations like yours, I know, are working with disabled people to find the best way to get them health care. I have disabled friends who will never have a mammogram because that machine is not accessible for them to do it. They can't stand that long. They can't stand up at all, right? They're on crutches, they're in wheelchairs. So these things are happening to our community at a higher rate. And that's why they're dying at a higher rate, because of those things. But we also know, right, midwifery has been in the disability community, as you said, right, since the beginning of time. So has SA, self-abortion, disabled women and people, because they are also the higher rate of having violence to their body, right? And from that, they may have gotten pregnant, and they learned a long time ago, many of the medications they take, they say don't take while pregnant. They took it so that they would not have to give birth to this child that happened from this violent event if they wanted to. And so this has been around for that community for centuries. They've been doing it, right, as long as they knew their bodies and knew what was going on. But also on the other side, you know, we don't teach our disabled children anything about sex health or sex education. If you have an IEP in this country, which is an individual education plan, and for you Black and brown families out there, many of our children are starting to get them, which is good, right? We have early intervention and we're starting to see that. But understand and know that in IEPs, because of white folks and the way they read it, they don't teach those students sex education. We've gotten around it by like doing health classes and things like that. But guess what? At a higher rate, those are the students and the children who come to harm around their body at a higher rate, because they don't know their body. So I just want to understand and know that.
No, oh man, we're running out of time. I'm gonna have to bring both of you back. You know, because I also want to talk about this growing criminalization of women, because I know I was reading a story about a couple women already have been arrested, one for having an abortion, but the other one who had a miscarriage, and they consider DNC. After you have a miscarriage as a woman, they have to take the fetus out. There's two books. One is called Policing the Womb, Invisible Women and the Criminalization of Motherhood. So I hope that, you know, folks really, really read, and how they have used the kind of corporate pharma healthcare system, or some people would say death care system. And then another one called Under the Skin, the Hidden Toll of Racism on American Lives and on the Health of Our Nation, by Linda Villarosa. So I'm gonna have to bring y'all back. This is, I mean, I just, everything y'all said, you know, you think of things at the macro level, and it's all these other tentacles and micro level things that people just sometimes don't understand. And like legit, there's still a fear of older Black and Latino people who don't trust doctors. I mean, look, my parents were born,
doctors are not trustworthy.
Right. And then especially in the Latino community, though, like, you basically just listen to the doctor. You know, and like recently, my dad was very sick. My mom, and they're going to kill me, but they are dope because they're 83. My mom could run a marathon and all that kind of stuff. But my father was going through stuff, and my sister and me had to my sister talked to the doctors, like, absolutely not. I want to speak to all the doctors. Why haven't you done this for my father? When are you going to do it? And like, my dad is very healthy, and this is like kind of the first time he ever got sick. And then I was talking to my mom, and I was like, you know, also like, you know, when you go through a traumatic experience, you have a surgery, you have pneumonia like that, you can become depressed. and I was just like, Mom, just watch out. Like, of course, Daddy's always been happy, but it's okay. And I told my dad, I was depressed. I had 3 surgeries in 4 years. I'm still traumatized from those things, So before we let you go, if both of you could give out a way for us to contact you, for people to connect with y'all, and I'm gonna have to bring you back pretty soon, because I think we're gonna see all these things really now move super fast. And we have to do the work that y'all are doing, but also not just be a supporter, but get into the trenches if we're able to or want to. So both of you could just give out your contact information to people watching.
Go ahead.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us for this conversation. I love exploring the intersections in our stories and also between birth justice and disability justice. And I just want to uplift the need for more community-based and home-based services to make sure that we are being as accessible as possible. I think that what you were speaking about, Sister Dara, about the accommodations necessary to make sure that disabled people have access to the care that they need, is something that is definitely, it's doable, right? It's something we can accomplish. It doesn't even cost a lot of money. It just takes caring and prioritizing and centering the most marginalized folks. So thank you for the work that you're doing. And thank you, Sister Rosa, for providing this space. You can find me at www.southernbirthjustice.org. Again, southernbirthjustice.org, 3 words, Southern Birth and Justice. And then that's also the same for the Instagram at Southern Birth Justice.
Sister Dara?
Sisters, yes, my sisters. Thank you, Sister Jamarah. It's been wonderful, and I can't wait to come and meet you. I hope to see you soon when I get down.
Yes.
And I am Dara Baldwin. On Instagram, I am at N as in Nancy, J as in Jersey, New Jersey, DC 07. I'm originally from Jersey. You can hear my accent, and I moved to DC 07, and that's on every social media. You can also hit me up on email, Dara, DARAL, D as in David, B as in ball, the number 1, the number 8 at gmail.com. I'm always available. And I just, Rosa, you know how I love you. Thank you, sis, for always including me, for your work that you're doing. You're right. We're going to have these conversations. I can't wait to have them. Everyone out there, please be careful in what's happening. Take care of yourselves. And please donate to this wonderful woman's show. She needs it. We need her. We need her to stay. So donate and use the Cash App and tell all of your friends, because this is needed. We need independent media. We need people who are going to have the voices like here. You won't see this. You won't hear this on quote unquote mainstream. But we are the people. We are the ones doing the work. We are the ones out here who are going to create change and who want to make this place better.
Yeah, and
that's right. It's never been about governments. It's always about the people.
I love you so much, Dara. You have been such a rock for me. And Jamarah, I am so glad I texted Janet, and thank you for being here last minute. But now I've met an incredible sister that I would love to support. Maybe I'll have to go to Miami if I could see somebody like you.
Come through. Pull up.
And everything you're doing. But I'm going to bring you back individually because I want to keep going deep, because as things get worse, then the stress levels, all of that, and we have to be ready for those outcomes. And I think sometimes for activists and organizers, they always kind of feel shame. Like, I'm tired. It's okay. Like, you want to be in the movement for what we call the long revolutionary haul, you got to take care of yourself. Yes. And the older you get, like more, but we don't need martyrs, and it's okay to say I'm in pain. And thank you, Dara, for really nuancing, like, people watching what's going on are also having levels of stress themselves, especially our younger people. So thank you both, Dara, Jamarah. I will see you soon. And let's keep fighting.
Keep fighting. Peace and blessings, everyone.
Peace, fam.
Peace.
Okay,
thank
fam.
You.
I'll be back in about 3 minutes for our next segment. It's a marathon today. Yay.
That was wonderful. Thank you, Jamarah.
You're right.
Thank you.